Greetings, it is I, Tantus Narvan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on the various campaign settings of Dungeons & Dragons, dating back most from AD&D. Let's continue where we left off with Spelljammer, Dungeons & Dragons Adventures, in space. Last time we were talking about engines, mostly Helms and modes of transportation. Let's talk a little bit more for a brief second. There are non-magical helms and modes of transportation. These are normally used when you enter areas of non-magic zones, basically called sargassos, areas where helms don't function. They're also used for lifeboats or landing vessels that are too small to put an actual helm in them. Oftentimes they can be, of course, backup systems should something go wrong and you need some kind of propulsion. The problem with these is that they are very slow. They travel about 17 miles per hour with a SR maneuverability of 1, so it would take years to get to the nearest planet. And don't even talk about traveling in between crystal spheres. The problem with this kind of technology is that no one is attempting to develop or research it because helms are such an important and easy way of doing it. These more primitive matters are then forgotten, put by the wayside, ignored, even though they are in some cases still used and still accessible. It's also important to note that if you want to take off from a planet using one of these systems, you can't take off from a planet larger than a class A using these systems. So, let's talk about weapons. Every ship will have a standard array of weapons. These weapons are often descendants of those weapons used in siege combat and naval combat. There are very little changes in between their original forms, but basically they have been adapted mainly for space, with the small changes that have occurred. These are things like catapults and ballistas being most of the standards. There are cannons for space called bombards, but they tend to be less used and less common. The fact is that smoke powder doesn't have the same effect in every sphere. It changes and varies from sphere to sphere on its effectiveness, and you can't use it at all in the phlogiston, which makes it kind of useless during that traveling period. So you can see there are disadvantages to this. Now, as I said, each ship has a standard complement of weapons. This is not included in the ship's price. You will have to buy these weapons separately. This doesn't mean that I can't install extra weapons on my ship. I can choose to put more weapons on the ship, but each weapon I put on my ship eats up some of my cargo space. I'm effectively replacing cargo space with weapon space. Each weapon will tell you specifically what kind of space it will be taking up on your ship. There is exceptions, a RAM. Most ships will either be designed with a RAM in mind or could have one installed. That will be part of the hull itself. And that's exactly what it is. It's part of the hull, so it has to be intrinsically built in, and a ship can only have one RAM when it does have one. Now all the other weapons will give their basic information. For one thing, it will tell you how much hit points damage they do and how much hull point damage they do. Each weapon will require a specific amount of crew. You will be assumed to use the same amount of crew as it actually needs to operate the weapon effectively, but only one crew minimum is actually needed. If you have less than the normal amount of crew, it works less effectively. Many of these weapons will work perfectly fine on a planet, just like they will in space. This includes ballistas, catapults, gnomish sweepers, rams, bombards, Greek fire projectors, jettisons, and turrets. All of these are weapons that you can get installed in your ship and have their own unique rules that if you want to learn more about, go ahead and read up on them in the book. Each one of them functions differently and has different uses when it comes to battling in space. Now, we've talked about weapons that you have. Let's talk about the reverse, the defense of your ship. Your hull is the defense of the ship. It defines your hull points, it helps define your hull points. It helps define mainly your defense, your armor, the ability for your ship to take damage. Now, the fact is, most of the time, based on the design of the ship, based on the way the hull is built, and based on the overall material of the hull, makes the determination about these basic statistics of the ship. You can alter this in a couple of ways. First off, you can alter the thickness of your hull. A thicker hull means, of course, more material that would have to be pierced. The other way is with plating, where you can plate the hull with a special material, another harder material. Both of these are material or ways that you can get around increasing your hull. Both of them do one thing: increase your defenses, decrease your maneuverability. It slows you down, it makes it harder for you to move. Installing these on your ship makes you weigh more. Things like this that makes it that your ship is less effective maneuver-wise, but more effective defense-wise. So talking about maneuverability, there are a number of things which affect maneuverability. The basic shape of your hull, the shape of the ship itself, things like sails, oars, and other materials could affect the way that your ship maneuvers throughout space. There are some ways that you can basically increase the way that your ship maneuvers. First, you could look to its extras that you're adding on. This is called rigging. Rigging are little extra devices which help increase maneuverability. The thing about rigging is it requires manpower. You have to have crew in the rigging in order to make it work, and it has a cost to it. It's expensive to add rigging in, but this is a basic way you can add maneuverability. On the other hand, there's reducing the mass of your ship, cutting down on its armor, basically shaving down on some of the hull to make the hull thinner. This is called stripping. This does help add to the maneuverability, but on the context, it removes armor, it removes defense. The fact is that, because we talked about the reverse of this, adding armor and reducing maneuverability, the two of these technically could be put together. You could add hull plating to a hull you've shaved. The problem with this is it's not exactly one for one, and they do tend to both cancel each other out and make things less efficient on your ship. So you really don't want to mix and match your modifications too much. Certain things are more compatible than others. For example, you could probably install rigging on a ship that you put armor plating on, because the rigging itself is an extra, rather than trying to reduce the hull, which already reduces the armor, and then you're increasing the armor while reducing the maneuverability and increasing the maneuverability, and boom. There you go. Now, beyond the basic siege weapons, the book does list a number of personal weapons, like a wheel-lock pistol, ammunition for it, and ammunition for siege weapons. All this information is listed in the book, along with prices, that you have an idea. There are other special items which are listed here, which are more for use upon your ship. A passage device is just what it sounds like. It allows passage from a crystal sphere into the phlogiston. It's a device to create a portal through the crystal shell that doesn't require any kind of extra magical spells. It's a way that someone that has a spellcaster that wouldn't have an ability to create a portal, for that ship to still be able to create a portal. A portal locator, on the other hand, is a device used to locate portals that are naturally occurring upon a crystal shell. As I talked about before, there are natural portals which do occur in random bursts. This is a way of detecting them, tracking them, traveling to one, and using one as easy it can be, while it's still open. There is also planetary locator map. It's basically a special type of mapping device that has a system display. It shows off where all the planets within a celestial system are, all the celestial bodies. It won't detect anything of class B or less, so it has to be of a certain size, but anything of that size, it will detect and map it out for you in a kind of three-dimensional display, so that you know where to go within the crystal sphere itself to find these celestial bodies. But that's it for today. So, first we went over just a little bit more about engines with non-magical engines, and letting you know that they exist, they're not very effective, and no one's researching them anymore. Then I dove into armaments, the weapons based on siege and naval weapons that you'll installing on your ship to battle, well, other ships. We, of course, talked about the hull that you're going to have, your main defense, and how increasing that will oftentimes decrease your maneuverability. Moving into maneuverability and talking about the fact that you will be maneuvering around throughout your journeys, and there are ways of altering your maneuverability, also making it better. I finally finished up by talking about a number of personal items, just that they're there, and talking about some specialized items that you might want to get for your ship. They're not necessarily ship-based items, because you could take them wherever you want. They're items that your characters may hold, but they're for use on a ship in particular. In the next episode, there are a few more items that we want to cover, and then we want to move on to talking about the crew you're going to have aboard your ship. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows support for the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you're going to check out my Patreon, link description below. There's some great rewards there. It helps to grow and improve the channel and the Empire. Regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.